In this video, I will discuss about the basics of function. That is every single thing you need to know about function at its basic level. So a function is a block of code that performs a specific task. Functions help in reusing codes. That is, you can write a code once and then use it as many times as possible as you want. And then it improves readability. That is, it breaks a big program into small understandable pieces. And function also help in organizing codes. That is, it groups related steps together, and then it helps in abstraction. What abstraction simply means is that it helps to hide complex steps behind a simple name. So instead of going through those complex steps again, you just need a simple name to get the code activated. So now, the first thing I'll show you is how to define a function. To define a function, which is creating a function, use the define inbuilt function. Define and then the name of your function you want to create. For instance, let me say I want to find the I want to check if a number is even or odd. Okay, so I can give the name of my function even or odd, and then the parameter, this bracket is for the is to insert the parameter for calculation, or yes, the parameter that the function is going to work with to give an output. So let me say num. So what I want to do, I want to check if a number is even and odd. So to do that, first of all, before I move forward, you can actually explain what your function does, which is called the docstring. That is, I can say this function calculates this function checks if a number is even or odd. This helps any developer, or it helps you remember your function, so that when you leave it for a long time and come back, you can easily understand what the function does. Okay, so if num modulus 2 is equal to 0, that is, if this number here divided by 2 gives no remainder, print num is even, else print num is odd, else print num is odd. So this is exactly what I want my function to do. So the next thing I'll show you is how to call your function if I want to apply this function. So let me call the name of your function and then insert a parameter into it. For instance, I insert 58. If I run this, 58 is even. Let me run 37. 37 is odd. Okay, so basically function helps to hide large chunk and complex tasks behind the scene. Makes it easier for you to reuse the code over and over and over again. So the next thing I'll show you is default parameter. Basically, a default parameter is when you give a value to a function parameter in advance. That is in the sense that if, for instance, I do not give any parameter, my code can still provide a result and doesn't give an error. So for instance, let me say I define Brit. Let me say name, insert a name here, and then print hello name. If I leave it at this, if I call this function greet without any parameter, I'll have an error. I'll encounter missing one required positional argument name. Okay, so now to avoid this, I can insert a default parameter saying hey, even if you don't give me a value, I already have what to use. I already have a default one to run with automatically. Okay, so to insert the default parameter is use the equal to sign, equal to, and then insert whatever you want to display. For instance, let's say friend. For instance, let's run this. So now, without inserting any parameter, if I run this, it shows hello friend, which is the default parameter. So you can insert default parameter to your function. Alright, so the next thing I'll talk about is the variable length argument. Very important. Variable length argument. So basically, a variable length argument allows your function to accept as many numbers of input as possible. It's not like a normal function where you specify a specific parameter. In variable length argument, you can insert as much parameter as you want. There's no specific length of parameter to insert. Okay, just think of it like a normal function is like a box that holds one or two items only, while a variable length function is like a bag that holds many items as you want. Okay, so now there are two types of variable length arguments. We have the positional argument and the keyword argument. So let's start off with the positional argument. Okay, so let me define which function. Let me say, for instance, I want to define a function sum. Let me use underscore because this is an inbuilt function in Excel. I want to define my function sum, and then I want this sum to include as many parameters as I want. Use the asterisk sign to symbolize that. Then you can give any name to the parameter, but universal standard says use args. You can insert whatever name you want, but universally this is the standard. So I can say I can specify that this function sums the this function calculates the total of given parameter. Okay, this is not this is not mandatory. Okay, with or without it, we can still create we can actually create a function. So what I want this function to do is to sum up every parameter inside my function, parameter input. Okay, so to do that, I'll use a for loop. Let me give a variable that will hold. Let me say num is equal to 0. For, okay, let me say total. For num in args, why am I getting error? Okay, I wrote O instead of 0. For num in args, that is, yeah, I want to iterate over each values in the function. Okay, I want to iterate over each argument. So for each argument in the args, total plus equal to num. What this does is that it starts off with 0 and then picks the first argument and sum it up. It then stores that that new total on the variable total, and then picks the next parameter, add it to the total, and then store it up here, and then we have a new total value. It then picks the third number and adds it to the total, and then stores it up in the total. Then we have a new total. It then picks the fourth number, adds it up to the total. It does this on and on until the parameters are exhausted. Okay, so print total. Okay, so what this does is that it finally prints the total parameter. Okay, so if I call the function sum, and then I insert as much number of values as you want, it has no limit. Okay, so if you run this, you get a value, so there is no limit to what number of parameters to insert. So this is exactly how the positional argument works. So the second type of argument is a keyword argument. This is basically like a dictionary, creating a parameter for dictionary. Okay, we define let me say details. So for this keyword argument, you use double asterisk. Then the universal format is keyword args. You can actually give this any name of choice. Keyword args. Okay, so now for key comma value, because this is iterating over a dictionary, in keyword ask dot items okay, print key comma means in column comma value. Let me run my code. So this is basically iterating over the dictionary parameter. Okay, so now if for instance I say details name is equal to Precious, comma age is equal to say 24, do this in 24, comma, and let me say grade is equal to A. Grade is equal to A. If I run this code, and see name, so it's iterating over each pairs in the parameter. So this is basically how to create a keyword argument. Keywords are basically in dictionary formats. Let's do a real world example showcasing all I've explained so far. So if for instance you have a student course and then you want to calculate the average score, you want to know the highest score, and then you want to know the lowest score in a student's exam scores. Here is how to go about it. So you first of all define your function. Let me see, let me call this function student summary. So in this function I need the name parameter and the scores, and then the scores. Okay, so now I want to look for the average score of this student. So average is equals to the sum of the scores divided by the length of the scores. Next thing I want to see is the highest score, which is the max scores. Then the lowest score of the student is the next thing I want to see. Lowest is equal to mean of scores. Okay, so now return the name, return the average score, return the highest score, and return the lowest score of the student. Okay, so this is exactly what I want my code to do. So let me call my function student underscore summary. then name is Precious, comma, so let me create a list. Let me say 56, comma, 70, 98, 84, let me say 72. So if I run this, Precious 76, 98, which is the highest score, and then the lowest score. So this is basically all about the basics of function. So with this, you're ready to get started with function. Thank you very much for watching. See you next video. Bye.